As Jmonster, and welcome back to another Silmarillion Total War battle. Today I have that siege that I mentioned in, I think it was a couple days ago. And it's going to be a big one. As you can see up there, it's about 3 times the size of our normal games. So there's going to be a lot to see. I'm going to try and cover it all. In any case, let's jump into the army compositions here. So, the entire attacking team, we've got a lot of good faction on good faction violence here. Very unfortunate to see, but certainly on brand for the first stage. The House of Feanor, of course, first in line to kill their fellows. Going to be played by Captain Gervais today. He's got some huntsmen of Thargelion, light archers, 2 of them are right there. He's also got a couple Rangers of Hellevorn, really useful, fairly versatile unit. You can use it to prey upon heavy infantry, monsters, really anything with high armor values, high shield values, etc. Being hunter javelins, they are extremely well adapted to take those kind of challenges on. We've got some Footmen of Himring here. I'm not sure if these are live at the moment. I don't believe that they are, but you're going to see a lot of the new reskins done for the House of Feanor by Stewart of Dale. We've got just two units of the Footmen of Himring, a couple units here of the Defenders of Aglon, and of course, the legendary company, the Accursed of Alcolande. They're a relentless unit. They've got a lot of damage, but they do have less melee defense than their counterparts just here to their left. And that does make a big difference when it comes to armor piercing, of course. Cavalry charges, things like that. All of those are units that can be extremely efficient against the Accursed of Alcolande, while really not costing, anything close to their price tag. I think they've got like a $1,200, $1,300 price tag. And you can kill off half of that unit with a unit of 600 Florin Lancers. So some very efficient counters there, but when they are in combat, they are absolute melee blenders. I think they've got like 16, 17 armor. Very hard to take them down unless you have that armor piercing. Really scary unit. They also cause fear in addition too, so that's lots of fun. Shield Bearers of Hellevorn here. They've got a little bit of a numbers increase as they are in a lot of ways a mainline unit for the House of Feanor, giving a little bit of breathing room for the Footmen of Himring. Most of the Noldor units in the Noldor heavy factions have kind of had their role shifted more towards being an offensive unit. The Noldor being some of the mightiest warriors of the Firstborn, especially in the First Age when they were at their zenith. They'll now reflect that a little bit better, I think, in the mod. So a little bit more damaging, whereas these guys don't do nearly as much damage, but they've got more numbers, they're a little bit more cost efficient, and they've got some insane survivability when they're placed into shield walls. I think we've got three units of them. Yep, pretty decent. Got some Stalkers of Thargelion here. These are going to be, unlike the full-size unit, this is a detachment, and the detachment does have a few things that it does differently. It keeps the AP from the axes, but they are a good deal smaller, and instead of Precursor Javelins, which are just a little bit extra damage for the units that have them, but don't do anything special, these are Harassment Javelins. So they're going to have a high range and a very high flight speed, but they don't do nearly as much damage as, say, the Hunter Javelins from the Rangers of Hellevorn. So just something to make them a little bit different. In the back here, we have a mounted company of Himring detachment. They are now equipped with Hunter Javelins, give the House of Feanor a little bit more AP, as AP is an important counter for a lot of the unit classifications that have really changed throughout the overhaul. So I've mentioned a few of those already. I won't go into it now. 2 mounted company detachments here. Why bring them in a siege? Honestly, why not? Sometimes your enemies like to surprise you with a cavalry rush, and that can actually be really devastating and cost you quite dearly moving into the late game. So a couple of them hanging out, why not? And they've also got the Hunter Javelins, so you can use them to pick on bodyguards, stubborn units hanging out in choke points, things like that. And it looks like a 3rd unit here of the Stalkers of Thargelion. I'm not seeing any hidden units out here in the woods. So we're going to move on to the next player here. And that's going to be Dor-Guthal, the new faction. Obviously, they need a new banner. They've got the Umbar banner here, and that's something that hopefully we'll get around to fixing before we release. They've got Brigands of Dor-Guthal. I'm not as familiar with this faction, so I can't remember if the Brigands are the Axemen who've got throwing axes, or if they're Macemen, off the top of my head. But it could very well be one of those 2 things. I'm sure we'll find out shortly. Got 2 of them here. One of the cool things to note about Dor-Guthal that is potentially very irritating if you do play with them in multiplayer and someone is kind of haphazard with how they place them. basically all of their units can place stakes. Dor-Guthal is meant to be a bandit faction. You're going to see them on the campaign map. You won't be able to play as them, but they will be in certain areas of the campaign map, and to sort of reflect that, they bring their forts with them, of course. These are outlaws, they're men on the move. So in order to sort of, I guess, pay homage to that, they can place stakes pretty well everywhere and create a little bandit fortification on the go. Over here we've got the Dreadhelms. They are currently labeled as medium infantry. That's going to change. Their stats reflect that they are heavy infantry, but I forgot to change that little classification tag that we have. They've got some interesting little abilities here. So you can see in their hand, they've got a little, it's almost like a mine of some sort. Essentially, this is a flash bomb. It works similar to a lot of the new disruption projectiles that we have. It doesn't really do a ton of damage. It can do some, because it's a big, ugly, spiky ball that blows up in your face, but it doesn't really do a lot. They're sort of a harassment javelin unit almost, but I think they've got a little bit less range than that. But the really important functionality of that projectile is that it can be disruptive. It will slow units who pass through it, basically by activating their stagger animation. And it will do that, I think it ticks twice before it disappears entirely, and this unit, I believe, has 2 volleys entirely. So you can use them to create a little bit of space. Dor-Guthal is very heavy into its archer units, so it's got a lot of archers and a lot of poison. So on that note, poison is actually working properly. Apparently it hasn't been for quite some time, and that's because it was missing an important trait in its projectile entry. So now it's got that, and will actually cause proper morale damage now. So you're going to see a lot of units drop from fresh to shaken really quickly. That's usually because they're getting hit by an effect like poison or something else. In any case, so the Dreadhelms have access to that. Buys a little bit of time for the Cuarthol skirmishing units to get another shot, 2, 3 if you're lucky off before melee kicks off. And the Dreadhelms are very much the core of any infantry force. Over here we have the old company of the House of Ransom, which is meant to be... Actually, I think you might be able to see them in the officers. Yes, people ask for petty dwarves. There's Mim, there's Beleg, and there's Turin. Don't think about the fact that there's 2 of them on the field today. Just look at them. It's fine. Don't worry about it. Old company of the House of Ransom have a mixed poison / armor-piercing arrow. It's one of the few... Well, not few. I think they've got 2, maybe 3 good answers to armor. But it does help make Dor-Guthal a little bit more deadly. They are quite low in number. As I'm sure you've seen, some of their unit sizes are a little bit odd. That's really down to some big unit size penalties that they take. So this is a really strong offensive unit. It's got a decent amount of survivability in melee as well. That being said, it is only medium tier armor. So it's not going to really outlast things the way heavy infantry and, like, say, the Dreadhelms might, but they do deal a lot of damage back in return. And, of course, they have that AP. So we have 2 units of them on the field today. Got some Huntsmen of the 2 captains. These are going to be Hunter Javelins. We've spoken about them already, so we won't worry about it too much here. And there's going to be 4 units of them on the field. Guardsmen of the 2 captains. They are Light Spearmen. They do pretty well what is advertised on the tin. You're going to find that a lot of the Dor-Guthal, especially their melee defense, is going to be very, very high. That's just to allow them to have a little bit of survivability, given that they do have these quite small unit sizes. 130 is pretty low for an Edine spear unit that's meant to be on the front line. There's a 3rd unit there of the Dreadhelms. That's going to have the general in it. You can see it right there. And I think that's it. None of their cavalry on the field today. Another unit of the Brigands actually here hiding behind 2 more units. Again, not sure if they're maces or axes, but we'll certainly find out. Over here we have the hidden city of Gondolin being played by Panthan. We've seen him in a few games now. A couple units here of the shield bearers of the towers. They're spearmen. They're heavy spears. They do what you'd expect them to do. We've got the armorers of the Wrath, who are exceedingly heavy armored. They can also take multiple armor upgrades to increase that even further. Naturally, though, they are a little bit light on the melee defense, and like most heavy infantry, they are fairly slow and take penalties in the woods. We're going to see 2 of them here today. This is a great unit to have in a siege, real powerhouse, and yeah, you're going to want to have them on the front lines, taking on heavy infantry, generals, bodyguards, whatever. They can deal a lot of damage back in return. We've got 1, 2 units that I can see of the Spearmen of the Swallow. A little bit of a hybrid unit. Hybrids are actually their own classification now in the overhaul. So they do have some bonuses, some penalties. I think they have penalties to the amount of ammunition they can have when, say, they have a ranged weapon the way that these guys do. Pardon me, but they also do get some additional melee defense. I think extra damage. I could be wrong on that. But in any case, moving on now. Speaking of damage, we have the Axemen of the Pillar here. Heavy hitting, heavy infantry. Not armor piercing, but unlike the Armors of the Hammer, they are a little bit faster, given that they have axes. That's part of their new template now. And they have a really nasty charge bonus. So off the charge, the Axemen can be extremely deadly. And with that shield and heavy armor, they also have the staying power to slug it out for an extended period. So all around a very, very dangerous unit. In behind them, we have the beautiful legendary company of Gondolin. Finally, it has arrived. Big thanks to Castle of Angmar for making this for us. That is the Phalanx of the King. It is a pike unit. I think we can understand why someone would want to take this in a siege. I guess the upsides, downsides to this unit is that it is capped at, I think, 9 armor, which is quite low for heavy infantry and quite low for Gondolin and Noldor heavy infantry in general. That being said, being a pike unit, pike units now get bonuses to their unit size, and this unit in particular gets its own little special bonus to its unit size. So it's high tier, but unlike a lot of these high tier units, especially the Noldor ones that come in about 120, 125 or so, they're actually going to have 180 men in the unit, and that is very significant. I got some Guardsmen of the Harp, just sort of bog standard line heavy infantry. They're a little bit better than they were. They're medium infantry now, but they are classified as Noldor, which means they're going to be able to reap the benefits of many of those new racial bonuses, and in particular, their damage. So I think these guys have about 9 or 10 damage, meaning that they trade a little bit better. I believe you can also upgrade their armor so they can go up to heavy armor. We don't have a model for that yet. I'm sure we will eventually develop one in time, but that's something to watch out for sure. A couple units here of the Scouts of the Tree. They haven't really changed all that much. They're a nice little sling unit. They've also got some maces for a little bit of added armor piercing after the fact. Retainers of the King, we've got the older model here, and that's going to be the General's Bodyguard. You see Tuargon there with his little rod of office and his crown hanging out with that unit. And I think that's it. Not really a ton of ranged, a very limited range presence. The Spearmen of the Swallow don't have a lot of longevity, neither do the Slingers. But let's move on now into this little wooded area here. And we have the armies of the Falas. The Elves of the Falas being played by a Lord of Belegost. He's got some Aran Kier Lim here. Very scary. 1 HP bodyguard tier unit. The 1 HP bodyguard units are 2 capped, so you are able to bring them in some numbers at the very least. So we got 200 and nearly about 230 or so of these elite elves here, and that is very scary. And of course, I mentioned it last game, Lord of Belegost sure does love his catapults when he's playing as the Philothrum. And now that's actually something I haven't talked about in the overhaul. Given that there is a lot of possibility for people walling up with heavy infantry, making choke points extremely painful for you to get through, things like that. There's a lot of heavier units. In particular, this is meant to target the heavy units, the phalanx units, of which there are more in the mod than there was, say, 2 years ago. You are able to bring most artillery twice, so you'll have them be 2 cap before they go up significantly in price. There are lots of ways to counter this. Like a good rush, like we saw in the last game, is a really good way to deal with artillery nests and things like that. But in a siege, yeah, you can really do no better. There's generally you outnumber the defenders, lots of places for you to hide, and just generally kind of choose your engagements wisely. So not surprised we see 2 of them here. Meridas of Earendil as well. I've spoken a little bit about them. They're more of a disruption unit now. That's why they are so small. They are also relentless and 2 HP, so they make it okay General's Bodyguard. I think that's exactly what Belegost is using them for. You can see Círdan hanging out there with his buddies. Where did the rest of this army go? This can't be all of it. I know he's got some horsemen and other things like that. Yeah, here we go. A couple units here of the Scouts of Berthalmar, which is a new unit for the Philothrum. Cavalry and skirmish and jockeying for position is much more important in the overhaul than it was previously, and it was still important previously. But skirmish in particular, I think, has had some big changes that makes it much more valuable. And against some factions more than others, but generally it is quite valuable. So it's important to be able to have both cavalry and skirmish. So there's a few factions that already had it, did have that did have the range of their roster lightly increased, and this is one such. So we got 2 units here of these light horse archer units. Not really melee cavalry. They do have some decent bonuses in the woods, but yeah, they're nothing really to write home about too much. Some Marines of Eglarest hanging out here. I know he's got 4 of them, so they'll be hiding out front. I'm almost sure he's got some Rangers of Brathambar. I think it's going to be a very similar composition to what we saw previously in the last game that I just released. So let's see if I can track down the rest of his army here while we fast forward a bit and wait for the battle to begin in earnest. Oh yeah, here we go. Marines of Eglarest out front. The scouts are there. I'm expecting to see some Marines of Brathambar. I'd be surprised if we didn't. We got some Spearmen of Brathambar here as well. 1, 2, 3 units. Didn't see them in the last game. It was mostly macemen and things like that he was relying on. I think this might be his whole army. Got some Rangers of Brathambar out front here as well. I think we'll probably see 3 units of them. Maybe just 2. Yeah, it's looking like just 2. So not a lot of the heavy Noldor here, which is an interesting thing to eschew in a siege like this, especially when he's going to be playing against Assyrian. So this is a little bit of a gamble. I guess he's gone for more of a quantity over quality approach, but we'll see how that works out for him. We're going to move on now to the defending players. Actually, we have a new player in the game today. He's going to be playing as the House of Bor. He's got some Axemen of Lothlan. I think I've gone over the House of Bor and most of their big changes, but I will do so again here in brief. The Axemen are a little bit different than your average Axemen in that their charge bonus isn't quite as high, sort of keeping in the more defensive nature of the Bor roster, but they do have big increases to their base damage. So their melee damage, when they're not charging, when they're just stuck in melee, is very, very high. And that is also going to apply to the General's Bodyguard. I can't remember the name of them, but I'm sure we'll see them in the game today. Oh, there they are, in fact. Never mind. That's just a unit upgraded to look like them. But that will also apply to the General's Bodyguard, which means that Bor has some really serious teeth with certain units, and that's something that you want to be aware of. Over here, some more Axemen. We have the Wardens of Lothlan, who are the only Bor heavy infantry unit that can actually take a second armor upgrade and get this particular and very distinctive look. And they're extremely sticky. This is a unit that you're going to see it in this game as well, can hold out for an inordinate amount of time, really just grinding things down. Great for delaying actions or for just kind of slugging it out in melee. They do have that shield wall formation that they can shift into as well, which makes them a lot better against things like polearms. So yes, there are more polearms in the game. I'm sure you've noticed that with Gondolin finally getting their legendary company. But the ways to counter them have also been given some thought. So you're going to find more ways to counter big pike walls and halberd walls and things like that. And overall, I think there should just be a lot of counterplay and a lot of interesting decisions for you, the player, to make. In any case, moving on now, we've got the Wanderers of Thargelion. I think they're an Axeman or a sword unit or whatever. Yeah, they've got swords sticking out the back there. But they are shielded, and they are obviously an archer unit. One of the things to note about shielded archers is that in order to just make them, not just better archers, they do take range penalties. So other archers of the same tier, I think they've got about 20 meters of range on them, which is fairly significant. And it can be the difference between that unit actually being able to deal damage from range and not, especially in a siege where you are confined to very specific places. That really matters more when they're trying to breach your outer defenses. So it can be a little bit of a hindrance there. Once they're inside, that doesn't really matter as much. But it is certainly something to bear in mind. Over here, we have some Hunters of Lothlan. As their name would suggest, they do have some Hunter Javelins. They are the detachment. The full-size unit has harassment, and that's really the big difference between the two of them. So a little bit of Hunter Javelins here, not surprising. Something you're certainly going to see a lot in sieges. More Wardens, yet more Wardens. I think we've got like 3, maybe 4 units of Wardens here. Obviously, they had a very expanded budget. Then we have the Amberone Honor Guard. We're going to have one of them as well. A couple units here of the Salamandrine Dragon Hunters. This is a new unit that's been added. Previously, I think that they're not on live, but in previous iterations of this patch, they were two-handed spears used to sort of defend your flank and act as an anchor. They were locked morale. That's no longer the case. They are now a halberd unit, sort of a detachment halberd, and they're going to replace the previous halberd detachment. And they give a little bit of extra morale, a little bit of extra damage, and things like that. So overall, it's a very nice unit that I think meshes very seamlessly into the Bor roster. And I've got 2 units here of the Salamandrine Dragon Hunters, and then 2 units of halberds. Out here, I think he's also got a couple of cav hanging out in the woods. Now, this is an easy mistake to make. Medium and heavy cavalry can't hide in the woods. It's just not something that they can do. So I think he's coming off of other games like Medieval 2, where basically all cavalry, like anything, can hide in the woods. That's not the case with these units here. So we've got a unit of the Salamandrine Guard and the Silver Wind Legendary Company. These have Hunter Javelins, and they're monster hunters. And, of course, they've got that big old spear, so they can hit hard off the charge. But they may be of limited usefulness here in a siege. We'll see what he's able to get done with them. Moving on over here, we have the Avari of Tower Imduina being played by Stewie. He's got some Bow Wards of the Darkling Wood. They're light spears. You probably know what they do at this point. They stick them with the pointy end. That's their job. Another 2 units of them right here. A couple of Thorned Ancients as well. You're going to see some big plays with them later. Shades of the Guarded Path. I think he's got the budget for 2, so it looks like there's maybe 2 of them in there. Some Stonehewers, Axemen. They do all the things that Axemen do, especially light units. They're going to be very quick, very stealthy, and can give as good as they get in CQB. I think he's got 1 unit here of the Host of the Withered Ashes. This is the legendary company for the Avari. They are two-handed spears, and they are also locked morale, so providing a really nice anchor to an otherwise relatively fragile Avari line. There's a bunch more of the Stonehewers mixed up in there. Now, this is a unit I am really excited to talk about, and you're going to see them in action today. Not just for the damage that they can do I like them, but for the reaction that they invoke in people. It's going to be wild. So they have a new projectile. It is a area of effect damage, basically a poison cloud. So it doesn't do any damage once it hits things, aside from the obligatory, it has to have at least 1 initial damage. All projectiles do. But after it bursts, you've got a few seconds where a green cloud kind of spreads out over an area. And the longer that your units stay in it, the more damage it will do to them. Let me explain to you in brief how it works. So initially, it will just stagger things. It's a area of effect that I can specify when it does this in second or half second or 3 second, whatever it happens to be intervals. Every half second there will be a new effect, and it'll start with staggers, and then it'll move to stagger damage, or like stagger damage, and then stagger damage, alternating in half second intervals, and then it just becomes pure damage. So the longer you stay in this poison cloud, the more damage it is going to do to you, and it can wipe out entire crowds of infantry. Why is that fair and balanced? It's fair and balanced because you've got, I think, about 3 to 4 seconds of reaction time before it really starts to set in and do a lot of damage. And so if you see this unit coming, you know to spread out, you know not to sit in the poison cloud, and you can always just move out of it in order to mitigate some of that damage. Because eventually the stagger effect falls off once the damage really starts to kick off. Or once it begins to. So you've got time to get out of there, and if you don't want to take damage from it, you just move. But if you've got units locked into place, especially if they don't see it coming, you can do so much damage. So it's a really cool unit. Really excited to show it off today. Moving up here now, we have some of the green elves. There's going to be a lot of things. It's the nature of the Avari and the green elves that are going to be hidden around here, so I might not get it all, but you will see it throughout the course of the battle. We have Hunters of Rathloriel, 1, 2, 3 units of Hunters. These are Harassment Javelins. They're a little bit different than some of the other Harassment Javelins, given that the Green Elves specialize, of course, in a longer range warfare. They've got a bit more range, a little bit more damage, maybe extra ammo. I could be wrong about that. I think their ammunition is the same, but they certainly do have extra range and damage. Part of that is because Green Elves are neat that way, and the other part of it is because when you mix Spear and throwing animations, there is a little bit longer of a reset time while that unit gets ready to throw a subsequent volley of their projectile. So, pardon me. Part of that is to balance that out, but also because it is fun and fluffy and fits with the Green Elves in general. Over here we have the Urfin and Tower, one of the few heavy infantry units for the Green Elves. They've gotten the same facelift that all of the heavy infantry units have gotten. Yeah, they basically do what they did previously. They've just got a little bit more armor while they do it. Mixed in there, we can see some two-handed spearmen, the spear host of Gelion. They've gone up with their melee defense, as have all light infantry. You're going to find that is true, especially for the Green Elves, but across all units of light infantry. Their melee defense has gone up significantly, as has their movement speed. So we've got 2 units here of those Urfin, and I think 3 units of those two-handed spears. We've got a Ballista, which has the Protectors of Dor-Guthal unit, which is unique actually to this unit. It's a spear unit, but you can actually bring 2 of them now, which is always cool, so they can form sort of a core of a heavy infantry force if you so choose. Scouts of Gelion out front here. This is an archer unit. They've got a little bit, I think, larger unit size, and the missile damage for the Green Elves has gone up really high. Their basic archers like this are going to do about 10 damage. And the Green Elves are extremely fragile. They don't have a lot of melee killing power. And there are some other things, like their spearmen don't have the same morale response or traits that other units do. So they are easier to scatter when subjected to fear or the death of, say, a general. And they also have a little bit less morale. So they are just generally easier to rout when it comes to close combat. But at range, if they are able to just fire and they get good positions, they can be a serious, serious threat. I know there's a third player here. So we've seen Bor. Oh, yeah, okay. We've seen Bor. We've seen the Avari. As much of them as can be seen. So we're going to go ahead and kick it into full speed here. And things are going to get started really quickly. Stu is going to take his Thorn Ancients, and he's going to throw them into the backwoods here. Oh, one thing I forgot to mention is that the Green Elves also have some Ents kicking around. I don't know where they are. They're maybe out back here somewhere. I know you're going to see some big plays from them a little bit later. So Stu moving out of there, taking a position up on the wall with some of his Moss Stalkers. Looks like he does have some archers here. Something that I missed a little bit earlier. Battle Wards in defensive positions. And looks like Bor, who deployed outside the walls, which is a little crazy, but it could have just have been the way the deployment is set up on this particular map. I think this is like the Woodland Village or something. That obliged him basically to be out here. Although he does have some cool ideas about active defense, and I think that's a really good idea, especially on maps like this. There are certain areas that you can like really bleed the attackers as they come in. You've got a lot of options, especially when you have lots of mobility and things like that. So now we can see Dor-Guthal in their entirety, quite large in terms of unit count, not so much in model count. So the Brigands are going to be the Macemen, so they're the AP kind of core of this army. Did we miss anything from Gondolin? I don't think so. Like I was saying, this is a really cool map. Everyone's going to have a position here, but none of the positions are, like, unfair, you know? Like, they're not easy to get into, and defenders, when they're, concentrated like this, they can bring artillery to bear. The Green Elves have Rangers. They're the traditional body-piercing Ranger, which maybe we'll see at some point here. Oh, yeah, there you go. Some Mithrin and Tolgalen, some Macemen, things like that. That really do kind of even out the numbers advantage, and they've got lots of good places to shoot from. Yeah, overall, I really like this map. Maybe not so much this half of it here. This seems a little bit too hard to defend. Most of the other approaches only have one way in and out. But let's see what we got going on here. Looks like a little bit of potentially early action. No. We do have some Belagos Cav coming forward. Looking to skirmish maybe a little bit, take some bites out of the Silver Wind, certainly. And I think that's exactly what they're going to go after. These guys are turned around. So 2 of them are going to die in fairly rapid succession there. And it's not a huge unit. You do feel that. Every time one of these models dies, you definitely notice. Salamandrine Guard probably should be out front here trying to exact a toll. Get rid of some of those arrows. There's not really too many targets for their ammunition aside from these guys, so this is certainly something that it would, I think, pay off to be aggressive with. Kill off some of those horse archers, at least get a little bit of value there. Some Wanderers of Thargelion hanging out up here. I really like this active defense kind of idea, especially right here, because you can fall back so easily. It's so easy just to get up that ramp and to put up like a short defense and then, you know, center that around this ramp. And if they chase you, they end up exactly where you want them to be and where they were going to end up going anyway. So this is a really cool idea, a nice fresh take here. You can see that, like a lot of our veteran players, there's like set ways of playing, right? Like everyone, this is very conventional. Everyone starts in the city, you take up position in the city, you never leave it because it's a siege, right? But this is, I like this, it's a fresh take. So hopefully he can make this work. What do we got going on over here? It looks like the city of Gondolin under Panthan has managed to reach the walls of the settlement, if you can call them that. The big rocky bluffs of this settlement, I suppose, to be more accurate. And he's going to be holding position here for quite some time. I think that's going to be the case for most of the players. They're just going to take up their position and then slowly figure out exactly what they want to do, figure out what's where. This is really unfortunate. Silverwind coming out here to pick on some of the spearmen. I don't know if I'd go after the spearmen. Again, this might just be an experience thing. The armorers of the hammer are a much juicier target, and they could be got even outside the range of those scouts. I don't think he's seen it. If he came out and approached it this way, rather than in a straight line, there's a possibility he could have taken a much bigger bite out of these out of the armorers of the hammer. But then, of course, there'd be the additional suppressing fire of these guys here. Salamanders taking some pot shots there at the scouts of the tree. It looks like they killed one of the phalanx models, or one of the models from the phalanx of the king, rather. Spirit of the Swallow, taking that on chin. You'll notice that this arrow does not any longer deal morale damage. It was never really meant to. That was actually how I solved. Looking at this entry is how I solved the problem with our poison effects not working. So that's really nice. But yeah, they no longer have it, even though that morale effect is working for everybody else. Taking a few pot shots. No one in particular out here. Maybe some of those scouts of Berthombar. Yeah, scouts of Berthombar would not do very well in a skirmish fight against the Salamandrine Guard, but it looks like they're going to get shredded again by those scouts, which those are expensive units. It does kind of hurt, but I guess there's an argument that could be made for it being cavalry, and it doesn't really matter that much in this sort of situation. Especially when there's not enough cavalry on the defending side to make concerted and very dangerous pushes. It's really just those 2 isolated units of cav on the defending side. So how useful are they? They may be expensive, but I feel like they're cannon fodder. So maybe soaking up a whole bunch of the ammunition from the scouts of the tree will serve them better in the long run. I guess we'll see. Phalanx moving around here, and it looks like some early action over here. The Axemen of Lothland, I think they were trying to block off some of the Himring cavalry potentially from coming up here. I think there's some dead, yeah, definitely some dead Feanor horsemen on the ground there. Now Feanor has been thoroughly blocked off here. Yeah, there's about 5 models missing from that unit. Feanor has been thoroughly blocked off here, and if Bor really wants to, they could make them pay quite dearly coming across here. The only real issue is that Dor-Guthal obviously is really pushing hard here. They've got some of those brigands in close quarters combat, but the Axemen, this is what they are bred for. Cutting down hordes of light, medium infantry, and they're going to do just fine here. The maces will help these guys trade a lot better for sure, But this is exactly where these Axemen will be. And exactly the sort of fight I think that they would be taking elsewhere in the city. That is unfortunate, however. See those flash bombs going off. Yeah, the Axemen definitely don't appreciate that. A little bit of friendly fire might be enough here to make them rout. What's behind them? Oh, it's not even friendly fire. Devious, devious elves in behind the Axemen of Lothland. Really making them pay for this. And this unit, it is soaking up a lot of resources. They are going to lose well over half the unit there, and that's going to be game over. They did take a decent amount of those units with them, but with no support, unfortunately, these Axemen, I feel, were doomed to die. Yeah, those Wanderers and all the nice things that were out here are no longer out here, so I'm not really sure why these Axemen got left behind, perhaps to just sort of cover the retreat. But again, that active defense, it's a good idea. It's not exactly being executed very well. But this area here, I think, is very defensible, and could be made to make the attackers pay pretty dearly. But once they really start to bring all their numbers and things like that to bear, and you get multiple players attacking you at the same time, this does become untenable. But you know, a light defense, not just giving it up too easy. I think it was a good idea. Over here, Silverwind getting attacked by spearmen. That's a bad place to be. I don't think that they're going to survive very long, unfortunately. I think they might be out of ammunition, but I don't know if he's going to catch it in time. And that is going to be... Nope, they are going to escape. What do you know? But they're going to rout. Unfortunate. Very unfortunate indeed. They would have been very useful over here, making these cavalry units pay quite dearly. It looks like the House of Bor is kind of... This is a little bit of a feudal gesture. This is one of the things, like, you got to commit to it or just don't do it. And that, I think, is a little bit unfortunate. That's what's happening here. He and his allies aren't really ready to commit to this, and he is throwing away quite a lot of units out here. More of the Axemen, more of those high damage units. Doing, you know, not really a lot. They're sort of bouncing off some of these Feanor units. Getting attacked in the rear now, and they're going to basically instantly rout. Yeah, that's unfortunate. Very unfortunate indeed. Over here, though, seems like things may be going a little bit better. You got some of those Wardens of Lothland contesting with these other spearmen here. It says defeat is certain, but honestly, if it wasn't for this, these guys would beat them. They're definitely a tier and a bit above, and they've got way more armor, popping themselves now into shield wall formation. That's going to make them extremely hard to kill. And this is going to be an ongoing fight for quite some time. You will see. Looks like some of these hunters got caught out as well. Yeah, overall, a little bit of a disaster from Bor. If this was locked off and like all these units were being just kind of kept at bay, you know, maybe this is something that could work. Like, consider for a moment using some efficient units here to block this off, to make Feanor come and tire themselves out trying to take it, and then a little bit more aggressively defending this part where you can do more damage, like Dor-Guthal, relatively fragile, gives you a nice opportunity to really come hard at that's an unfortunate turn of phrase, to really bring the fight to Gondolin over here. Oh, I'm not going to be able to get over that. I'll be chuckling internally for a while. Bring the fight to Gondolin over here. It does open up their entire flank. So I think this is a good position. This is one that I would certainly try and convince my teammates to defend. And if they want to try and fight it out, well, you've got lots of options here for like flanking fire and things like that. Yeah, wouldn't be a bad idea. But we're not really seeing it be executed well, sort of half-heartedly. And off those hunters, Lothland go, and these wardens are just they're gonna suck up resources for so long. They're so tanky. They're not gonna kill a ton of things. Like, they'll kill, I think, a decent amount of these spearmen, but they're just gonna eat up all this ammunition, all this fatigue. So this at least is a pretty decent trade, but everything else I don't think has gone particularly well for the defenders so far. That being said, Stu is up on the wall trying to take advantage of some of this chaos. I think he's going to be able to fire down into maybe some of these scouts, or potentially... Actually, he's been able to, I think, shoot a lot of these shield bearers and stuff in the back and in the flank and, you know, kill a decent amount of them. Yeah, it's looking like they're down by about 121, 124 or so models in the unit, so, you know, not bad. Brigands of Dor-Guthal getting shot up by those archers. I think Mevin is going to take them. He's going to storm right up that hill and maybe try and shut those archers up permanently. But we'll see. One more time with the poison. You can see the poison in action. Takes them down to shaken. Yeah, only for a few seconds, but it does matter. Or it certainly can matter. Ooh, some nasty artillery shots coming in here. Let's see if they actually manage to get anything. Oh, and they do! Poor Bor! Haven't they suffered enough? Some of those wanderers taking that on the chin. That's, given the amount of fireballs, it's definitely coming out of the Falas side. Those would be Belagos artillery battery at work. Got some shades up here. And this is really important. The first diffusers. We'll see what they manage to get done. And up come those brigands of Cuarthol, charging up that rampant. Stu doesn't seem to be doing a whole lot here to stop them. I wonder what possibly he could have in store for them. Well, perhaps it's the branch knockers of the Green Sea. They have the new smoke bomb projectile. You're going to see it in action here. There you go. He's going to create this big veil of smoke. And you're going to see these units just getting staggered over and over and over again. We actually got this from Igni Ferroqui. I think it's a brilliant trailblazing idea from Alex, the developer over there. And yeah, it does a little bit of damage, but not a whole lot. And yeah, it's just going to keep these units in place. This would be a great time to fire off a few more shots with those Moss Stalkers. I think Stu's going to go for a melee charge, which isn't necessarily a bad idea. We are going to be giving this unit Relentless so they can interact with this in a little bit more of an interesting way. Unless they already have it. They seem to charge through there just fine. But this would be a great opportunity to shoot them with those Moss Stalkers. There's really nothing they can do about it. The one thing to note, let me slow it down just a little bit here, about this projectile is that Relentless units, as I mentioned, won't be staggered by it because they don't have a stagger animation. That's sort of the magic ingredient behind those particular classes of unit. And cavalry, because cavalry can't be staggered in that way. They can't be like staggered in order to be kept in place. They just keep moving because the mount will keep moving, even if the rider flinches every so often. Which means that cavalry charges is a great way to set up cav charges. Not that the Avari have cav, which is why this unit will be getting a few tweaks to make them a little bit more friendly to the Avari way of waging war. But it is a really, really cool projectile. In any case, shots raining down onto these Dreadhelms, not really doing a whole lot to them. They are quite heavily armored. Huntsmen up here looking to outflank some of these Axemen. Again, these Axemen in an excellent spot. This guy may be new, and obviously he's made some mistakes, so like be nice to him. It's his first time playing the mod, and he's playing against experienced players, so that's a tough spot to be in. But he does have a pretty decent, I would say, intuitive understanding about what some of these units are meant to be used for, based on the engagements that he's taken with the Axemen consistently, and the Spearmen over in that choke point, who I believe are still there. There's flash bombs going off, doing what they can. But these Axemen, this is the perfect place for them to be. This is super, super efficient. They're going to cut through that door, Cuarthol infantry, like you wouldn't believe. Now, where are they? I need to know. I need to know what that Dor-Guthal, not Dor-Guthal, that Avari first diffuser unit is doing. Well, we'll figure it out later. Let's see what's going on elsewhere on the map. Looks like Gondolin has already begun their attack run, and the Green Elves are doing their best to hold them off. Now, Spear Roll units, oddly enough, it seems a little bit intuitive, but for whatever reason, they don't seem to do as well, even when they're fighting downhill. I don't know why that is. I've had people speculate that it's like an animation thing, whatever, but I personally have no idea. So it's a good spot for them to be, just because they're able to, block these guys off, and the Green Elves here are able to really do some serious damage to the Spearmen of the Swallow and other things down here on the approach. What do we got down here? Yeah, it looks like some of the Slingers tried to step too, and they deeply regretted that decision. Spearmen really taking a lot of damage here in return. They are returning fire, and the Green Elves, as I mentioned, are quite fragile. You can see them taking pretty staggering losses there. But yeah, ultimately I think that they'll just power their way through this. They'll be able to kill these guys much faster than they can be killed themselves, just through sheer dint of numbers and damage. Yeah, there's that skeleton of the tree unit. They got mauled there. Some of the guardsmen have taken a little bit of damage. Some cav over here to help out. And then, yeah, keeping those phalanx spearmen out of the line of sight of those archers is a really good thing for the attackers. Moving on over this way, see if we got any attacks beginning on this side. Doesn't look like it. Belegost certainly got himself into position over on, I guess this would be the west side of the city. And he's going to start taking some pot shots here. Again, skirmishing with the Green Elves. They're quite outnumbered. This is going to be an ugly fight for them, I think. And I don't even think that they're shooting at anybody right now, which is unfortunate. Likely Tundra's Fox just has them, as many players do, on has the auto fire turned off. But now he's noticed it. Now they're going to be able to start giving a little bit back. They are eating up quite a lot of ammunition, though, but these guys are cheap and not really the killing power of the Falothram army. Let's see. I want to know if they're still over in the choke point. And indeed they are. Look at this. Completely surrounded. We're 13,000 frames into this game. These guys have been at it for probably a good 1,500, 2,000 frames, maybe. Probably not as high as 2,000, but 1,500 does sound decent. And a lot of these units tired. These guys are probably exhausted. Yeah. A lot of very tired units, a lot of ammunition and things, a lot of blood spilled just trying to take this off them, off of one single unit of spearmen. So that's pretty impressive. Now these guys are going to get in there, maybe get a little bit tired. What have we got here? A big red tide moving around this side of the city, and it looks like they're going to step to the Green Elves as well. I don't think Tundra's Fox really wants this fight, because again, you could just pull someone around and, you know, attack up the other direction. So it's not a great place for them to be. It's also very exposed to fire from multiple angles. Whereas if he puts, you know, these little buildings and whatever in between there, that might mitigate some of that. And it does certainly reduce the clear angles of fire for enemy skirmishers. So it's a good idea overall. That's why I said earlier I don't really like this, because this is a little bit punishing, I think, for the defenders, and not really. It's just an advantage that the attackers don't need. So if I ever change this map, that's probably something I would do. In any case, Bow Wards, and were the Axemen pulled back ultimately? No, they were destroyed. But damn, did they take a toll! And now the Bow Wards are in there, finishing off what's left of that Dolan Cuarthol. Or Dor-Guthal initial attack force. Where are they? I need to know. No first refusers, but we do have some Rangers of the Hidden Path. That's not entirely unexpected. It looks like they have taken a little bit of damage here, but they're like a super powered Hunter Javelin unit. They've got extra ammunition. They've got a little bit extra damage, and I think a little bit extra range as well. It's one of the big trump card units that the Avari can bring to bear. Some of the Bor units that got crisped by Belegost's units over on the other side. Some scouts of Brithon Bar hanging out there, and it looks like he's just sort of very slowly biding his time, waiting for the right moment to attack up into this. And this is going to be an ugly fight. This is what I was talking about before with all of these light units, right? This isn't going to be a fun place to just send Falas unsupported. So he's got to be really careful with how he ultimately chooses to approach this attack. Otherwise, it'll just be an absolute massacre, which great for the defenders. They could certainly use a win like that at this point, but yeah, certainly not something that Belegost's team really wants him to recklessly throw himself into. Moving on over to the other side, let's see how Gondolin is doing. Belegost has brought up one of his catapults, and they're really pressing the Green Elves hard. They have put up a pretty decent resistance. You can see a lot of those dead spearmen on the ground there. Those are quite expensive units. Urfin and Tower making their way in here, and they're just gonna cut through these guys like rotten wood. Like, this is an extremely dangerous unit, and it's very good against basically everything that's here. It's like the ultimate chaff murder machine. And they're getting mass pushed a little bit, so shockingly they're taking quite a lot of damage. That ballista not really getting a clear line of fire. It is just kind of, plinking into the back of this hill, which, devastating that hill. That hill is getting its ass kicked, but nothing valuable is really coming out of that. They're holding on. And those guardsmen, they did manage to mass push through, but my god, at what cost? Getting absolutely devastated here, and there's an opportunity for more units to come down and just quickly get rid of them. The Axemen would be a great choice from this. A rear charge, I think they wouldn't even have to kill the unit. They could just rout it off, and that'll leave these Urfin and Tower free to continue beating these spearmen to death without being kind of partially actually fully surrounded. Really, they've got their backs to the wall, so that's no bueno. So something that I would definitely be calling my ally down to do. Some Scouts of Galleon. I suppose they'll do the job, but it won't be quite as impactful as those Axemen, but we'll see. We'll see what happens. Let's pop on over. Let's see what's going on here. Feanor setting up for their attack. They're now fully in command of this side. I'm pretty sure the spearmen have been killed off a little while ago. And Tundra's Fox and his allies, they're just waiting for it. This is going to be an ugly, ugly fight. A lot of spearmen, a lot of swordsmen in here. Fresh units being cycled to the front. Obviously, he's not going to use the troops that are just coming out of this. Oh god, they're so tired. Oh god, they're also so tired. Yeah, I don't think we're going to see much from those units until a little bit later. And these guys are also winded. They were thrown into that as well. So, quite the sacrifice there from those spearmen, to be honest. But now, we get to see some fun stuff happen. So, Belegost, you can see him getting ready, putting some units into positions where they're able to begin to push forward, attack, and try and trade pretty well. And a lot of these spearmen, Upper Thombar, great units to trade with some of these lighter infantry from Ossi end. Like those precursor javelins, they can do a lot of damage, but something wicked this way comes. The forest is alive, the trees are speaking Elvish, and out come 2 units of Thorn Ancients and the Ents. And if you look at this, there are some good counters here to these types of units, especially to those Ents. Marines of Aguilar-Est and things like that, they're in a great spot. But it doesn't look like they're going to have an opportunity to even throw those javelins. They need to throw those jabs in order to be, even halfway decent here against the Ents. So they will get a couple of them off, but that second unit is going to quickly spread out, smash into the Marines of Aguilar-Est, and then the Ents are going to be brought to bear. Now, the Around Kier Limb, obviously Belegost has seen this, and he knows what kind of trouble he's in, so the Around Kier Limb are being brought down to try and stabilize. But the Ents, they're going to have a field day. This is exactly the kind of unit that you don't want to fight elephants. Like, the Ents are armor-piercing, they attack in an area, and these are heavy infantry, and they don't have a ton of melee defense. They really rely heavily on their armor, and to a lesser extent, their shield. The shield will offer them some protection, but that armor is just going to get crunched and munched by these angry tree men, and it's just disgusting over here. Looks like these guys getting absolutely massacred, and 2 units basically getting gobbled up here, and now a 3rd unit of elite bodyguard tier infantry. Some of the Marines of Aguilar-Est managed to disentangle themselves, but look at the damage that's been done to them. They're down to half strength. This one is down to less than that because they've actually got some allies up on the wall there. The Scouts of Galleon from Tundra's Fox jumping on an opportunity, seizing it to destroy more of these Marines of Aguilar-Est. Now they're starting to, get ready, start a little bit of a firing line, but Stewie sees it. He's going to bring those Ents in, and their setup time, especially being spear skirmishers, it's a little bit higher. And now those Ents are going to be able to get in there. Stewie's going to see it as well. And these Marines of Aguilar-Est, not too sure what they're doing here. Trying to shoot something. Just utter chaos. And so many of these things are getting kicked to death. Now, the Mounted Company have been brought in. They used a little bit of their ammunition earlier when fighting Bor, so that's something to note. They managed to do some damage to these Ents here. That's where I think a lot of those red bloodstains are going to come from, because it's certainly not coming from the Around Kier Limb. And they've managed to do some damage, soften them up a little bit. And it looks like if I could find the Ents here. Oh, there they are. Yeah, there have been some deaths, I believe. A couple of models killed. But they're just cleaning this up. Now look at this. they've gone from being down to being almost dead even, and it's only going to get worse from here. These Ents are just kicking to death a lot of this important infantry. The Marines of Eglarest, the only real hard counters over here to them that could have potentially stopped this if they had some body blockers. Not going to be able to do a whole lot. So the Ents are just going to get in there. I don't think we've seen them throw more than a handful of javelins. This is a bit of a rout for the Fallothra. This is just ugly and disastrous. Now, Gervais is coming over. He's got some Rangers of Helleborn. But one thing to note is that these are high-mass units, and they're quick. There's no body blockers here, so it's going to be real hit or miss whether or not he can even get off a volley. If he can, I'm sure he's going to do a ton of damage. Like, if he doesn't kill off models, he will certainly weaken the Ents that are here. But, yeah, this is bad news. Bad news bears for sure. Really nothing between him, and if Thunderous Fox is going to see it, I think I called him Stewie earlier. Sorry about that. They're both playing with 3 people. Come on. Thunderous Fox is going to see it, and the Rangers are going to get a few shots off. Oh, nasty. Some of those do miss, though. And the Ents are going to be able to get on top of them. There's really nothing to stop them from doing this. And they're going to turn to run away, but they're going to take all of those kicks in the back. And it's going to bring that unit from, I think, 120 down to just about half strength. Very unfortunate. And again, nothing to stop, like, even if they disengage, there's nothing to stop these Ents. Nothing whatsoever from chasing these guys down and destroying what's left of the unit. So look at that there, eh? It's still 3%, but this has been a disaster for the attackers so far, and it's only been a handful of units, relatively expensive ones. Now Gondolin has arrived on scene. Yeah, that armor piercing, now you're going to see them start to drag down quite a lot of these Ents. Thunderous Fox definitely going to want to pull them out of here. Don't want to stick in CQB with the armorers for too long. Looks like they have done a little bit of damage to them, but now the attackers rather, are starting to get this under control. They've got the counters here that they need. Those Rangers of Helleborn have turned around, and they're taking pot shots at these Ents, who I think are completely isolated. I don't think... Okay, so there are some tree men left. This is where they ended up going, eh? So the defenders have sort of split their forces here. I don't think I would leave the tree men here. It's entirely possible this dude just got caught out, and there's just not enough like mass and numbers and momentum to really push his way out of here. So he might just have to kind of fight it out. That's entirely possible. But if it were an ideal world, try and get them out of here. Oh yeah, there you go. He's going to be able to at least save some of them for a later date. Certainly don't want to have them fight against these guys for too long. And up here in the choke point, things are looking a little bit dire. But I don't think all the Ents got killed off. Nope, they are chasing down those Rangers of Helleborn. Again, should be running towards the armorers, not away from them. The armorers are very slow. They can't keep pace with the Ents. Should be running towards help instead of away from it, but I understand. I definitely did that in the last game I was in when I rewatched the replay. The instinct is to run away from what's hurting you, right? If you stop and think about it, really it's better to run the other direction. Another Ent goes down. Most of them have died off at this point. I don't think there's going to be too much more that these guys can really do, but this is just so impressive. This is an excellent use of those units, of their mass, their mobility, and just nice teamwork and a well-timed ambush. Like, by the time, Belagost was set up for his attack and he'd moved off a lot of things like the catapults, like one catapult shot, of course, would kill an Ent from a very large distance, so if he was willing to sack units, he could just use them to tie down Ents and then, shoot them from afar. They waited until most of that stuff was gone, and then he just had a few things here. They jumped on top of them and destroyed them. Just soccer kicked them right off the planet. So really, really nicely done there. Looks like some of the scouts getting kicked to death too. Can nothing stop these Ents, man? Can nothing stop them? Marines of Eglarest might be able to if they get another volley off. Well, Tundra's trying to move them, but they can be a bit janky sometimes. Oh yeah, axes coming down. Trees don't like those, do they? Another Ent went down. Looks like maybe he might be able to save one singular Ent. So they will lose most of that. I probably would have got out of there a little bit earlier and tried to save them, but it's a hard call to make. Like, do you want to just sack them and try and kill as much as you can and even out that score? Or do you want to, get in, get what you can, and then move on out. It's a hard call to make, and oh, there's actually two of them. What do you know? It's a hard call to make, and yeah, who knows? Who knows what would have been the better choice? Meanwhile, over here in this choke point, stout resistance. House of Feanor not really having it all their own way. The shades of the guarded path have joined the affray, and they are more than a match for defenders of Aglon, especially when those defenders are already locked in melee, a little bit worn down from previous fighting. Yeah, those shades are going to make a big difference. Yeah, he just got smacked right into the halls of Mandos. Unfortunate for him. Consort of Thargelion, what are they actually shooting at? Oh, some cheeky rear shots into the back of those Mythern and Tolgolen. Not bad. Won't do a whole lot, but you will take down a few of them. They're very small models, so it does matter. More reinforcements down here. These guys just trying to get their breath back after a brutal fight for that choke point. The Accursed still hanging out, doing well. And up here, Dor-Guthal really pushing out hard. What do we got here? What are these? Oh, there's some rangers that got killed. Did I miss? Oh, did we miss the Poison Cloud boys? Maybe not. Over here, some huntsmen just kind of chilling out on that hill. Gotta be some of them. First diffusers. I'm not entirely sure where he used their previous ammunition. Let's head over here and see if we can find any burnt corpses, because it's definitely a sign that those slingers have been at work. Salamanders putting some fire into these units up here. Axemen of Lothland been brought to bear against Dor-Guthal. Again, really good choices here from the new player, at least in terms of the engagements for certain units. What do we got? Old Company moving out of the way. Oh yeah, that's because he sees the first refusers. All right, let's see if we can see it in action. No, doesn't look like it. I know that there was an attempt to use them over here, and there was like a huge blob of Dor-Guthal forces, and as soon as they saw them, they just scattered. They just went in every direction because nobody wants to get caught in that poison cloud. God, it can do so much damage if you let it. And now the poor first refusers, not having a good time here against the Old Company. It looks like some help in the form of the Salamander Guard. Salamander Guard are armor piercing, so that's always nice. And if they charge into here, they might be able to give these first refusers time to disengage, and that will certainly open up the flank of these units for some new possibilities for rear charges and things like that. So nice little bit of teamwork here. Let's see if he's ultimately able to save these guys. I don't know if Stewie has seen the sort of reprieve that he's been given here, because he doesn't seem to be pulling those units out yet. But now the Dor-Guthal, this is actually the legendary company for the faction of Dor-Guthal. They're going to move in there, and it's going to be all over but the crying for the Old Company here. And those horsemen are going to be forced to disengage. So there was a window to save the first refusers, but it is now gone. Now wouldn't be a bad time to move up some more reinforcements, maybe some of these halberds, things like that. This would be an excellent place to have them. They can't really be outflanked. These guys have to come through them. Wouldn't be a bad idea at all, but I don't know if they're going to ultimately decide to do that. Moving over here to this choke point, slowly but surely, they are winning their way through. It's been an absolute nightmare, a complete slog for these guys, but they do have the numbers, especially with the losses that Bor suffered early on in the game. So I don't know, it's tight. It's relatively close, but the attackers are starting to pull ahead once again. They're, I think, about 5 or 6 additional % up from where they were previously. Well, this must mean things are not going well for the defenders either. The Phalanx of the King, Panthan, feels it's safe to now bring in this expensive pike unit. Scouts are in here as well, so obviously the Green Elves have been pushed all the way back up this hill and even farther. Oh my goodness, the attackers are well and truly within the city, and that is bad news. Things are going relatively well over here. This is the spot of that big ambush, but now that they're in here, this undermines every other defense effort in every other part of this ring of the city. So I think this is where the House of Cards probably begins to fall a little bit, and the defenders begin to lose ground at a pretty rapid rate. That being said, I think there's still some green elves and things like that up there on the hill, raining down death and destruction. So there's certainly going to be more fight to come. But I think that maybe this right here at that mark in the timestamp. This is where things really start to turn around. Halberdiers, I don't know what happened to them. Maybe they were up on the hill or something like that. And now they're going to be staging a defense down here, which is really the only other logical place that they can. Trying to give some of these other more expensive units, the Mythern, a nearly full health unit of Urfin and Tower, just give them more time to get out of the way. Somehow, these guardsmen of the two captains managed to get behind that effort. I don't know how that happened. They won't be too long for this world. They are exhausted, outflanked, outnumbered, and really just outclassed. But it is going to buy some time, and I think more units coming in from Evan. Those Dreadhelms now moving down. Moss Stalkers charging into them from behind, hoping to rout them off, and there they go. And that is going to, free up this blockage here and allow those expensive and elite green elves to retreat back up the hill. There are some options here. More Urfin and Tower. Oh, maybe he had 3 units of them. What do you know? He had the budget for it. Why not? Lots of missile units and things like that up here that can make this little stand. I wouldn't commit anything else to it. In fact, I would probably even pull the Moss Stalkers back. But this is something that can make this stand very worth it if they're able to just hang out here for longer periods of time. Oh, the Mythern actually are up there. Oh no! Missile units being brought to bear up on this little hill. Old Company of Ransom. Don't know what they're shooting at. Probably at the halberds. Wouldn't be surprised to see that. Rangers. Oof. Yeah, that really hurts those defenders. Let's see if they can get one more. Yeah, raining down those javelins. Really making the sacrifice here count. Oof. Yeah. But yeah, this is where it's going to rapidly start to deteriorate for the defenders. Now's the time. Yeah, they can't even put up a defense here on the hill, because they've got so many of these missile units they'll just get peppered with. And because there's so many light factions, it's really just Bor who could stand up to that. And Bor is looking worse for wear. They've only got a handful of units left over. Yeah, this is not going to go well. Let's see if these guys actually manage to get a shot off, though. Taking a screenshot of that. We'll use that for after. Oof, yeah, really taking it on the chin there. One more? One more. And up come the attackers. Yeah, this is it here. This is all they have left for their last stand. It's a decent amount. Host of the Withered Ash, the Amberone Honor Guard, Ballista Crew, couple units of Urfin and Tower. Healthy units, too. Rangers of the Hidden Path, some halberds, dragon slayers. Yeah, this is what it's going to come down to. But there's just so many of the attackers left here. I don't know if they can, not without the advantage of like elevation or something. I don't know that this is something that they can make work. Halberdier's going to have a field day smashing apart these heavy infantry. Those other spear wall units being brought forward. There's a bit of a gap here, though. That could be a problem. Or it could be exploited, potentially, by the Rangers of the Hidden Path. Let's see what they can do. Old Company, don't know what they're shooting at. Not the Salamandrine Guard, apparently. Host of the Withered Ash actually managing to outflank here. There is like a little bit of an avenue to like maybe move some axemen and things through. It looks like Tundra's Fox. I keep confusing him with Stu. I'm sorry, I've probably done that and not noticed it a few times now. Tundra's Fox gonna smash his way through there, try and outflank some of these units, and it is kind of paying off a little bit. But I there's just too much. Yeah, if it was just this on the hill, I'd say it's pretty close. but it's not. There's more. There's a lot more. And these guys still have ammunition, too. Somehow this cavalry managed to come through. Not unscathed, but they managed to make their way in. Make their way to the end of the battle, rather. Yeah, just too much from the defenders here. Or from the attackers, rather, that's still remaining. That's pretty damn cool, though. It's not often that we get these big, ugly, like, shoving matches in Silmarillion. It's usually a lot more, like, smaller engagements leading into, like, one big final push, but it's kind of already, you have a good idea of where it's going. We don't often get these big, like, bulky kind of pushing matches. And really a lot of that's down to the amount of things we have to punish blobs. The Avari. Like, if they had their poison here, and the other guys didn't know that, or they just, you know, had no choice, this is where that poison could just be brutal. Like, this would be killing, it would be killing hundreds of people. Hundreds. And it would turn this around, but unfortunately, they don't have that. But we do have a lot more tools for punishing blobbing and kind of cheeses, I guess, and things like that. So maybe that's why we don't see it as often, but it's still really nice to look at every once in a while. These halberds need to move forward. The Urfin are kind of getting a little bit overwhelmed here. I think these halberds kind of need to go on the offensive. I'm going to go ahead. I don't think there's going to be much left to see other than this. So we're going to go ahead. That's probably the Mariners of Earendil trying to do stuff and things. Just using their ammunition, because why wouldn't you? There's not really a whole lot that they can do. Oh man, what's going on over here? Oh, it's the phalanx of the king pushing their way in. Just so many. But it's simple numbers, really. Like, look at it. The defenders do have some decent stuff that can trade really nicely in a situation like this, but they just don't have enough. Let's get some action shots there. Brutal, brutal fighting. Make sure that my sound isn't too high. Okay, my sound is good. Yeah, just furious fighting here. And now that final line of reserves, the Amberone Honor Guard, being forced to commit here alongside the Rangers. The Rangers are not bad. They've got really high melee defense, daggers in our mod. Do have a low base damage, but they have armor piercing and high MD. So it is something that can work in the right circumstances, but not in a big blobby fight like this. Those retainers are just... There's just too much. There's a bit of a mass push maybe going on here, and there's no tools left to stop it. Man, look at that rainbow vomit of different banners here, eh? Dor-Guthal on the front line, somehow not dead after all they've been through. Pole arms, smashing into pole arms, just pushing the defenders back slowly but steadily. They didn't do too bad. Let's be honest, that's not a bad ratio for given how outnumbered they were and how grievously they suffered in the opening stages of this battle. Like, this is the point where those missing Bor units are very, very conspicuous. Not having them just makes such a big difference. So, like, there's these guys in the back. You could have suppressed them with those two, with the unit of bows that got lost, for example. Or the whatchamacallit. I think there's some slingers in here too. Yeah, some scouts at the tree. They could be suppressing them right now and really just like making them pay pretty dearly for kind of showing their necks. Oh man, it's brutal. It's so brutal. Amberone Honor Guard. There's only so much that they can do to staunch this bleeding, right? Just really want to kill that one Salamandrine guard. We're using a lot of ammunition to try and kill that unit. Another shot? No? Nothing? Oh yeah, it's slowly being ground down here. 95 to 75. Yeah, this was a tough one. I really think that Bor's ideas in the early game were really, really strong. Active defense is something that I feel is really underrated. And again, maybe his teammates weren't willing to support him in that just because it does go against convention. Like, why would you leave? They've got missile troops. We're so fragile, etc., etc. But I think there was something to be said for putting, a brief resistance up outside the walls in that particular area. And if that was followed up then with an ambush, like, this could be a very, very different game that we're looking at. And, like, conceivably so. Not just, like, purely speculative, like, oh, maybe things would be different. No, but, like, you could see how things would have changed if there were more Bor units here, if that resistance had been made outside the city to try and trade a little bit more efficiently. And then following that up with an ambush, there'd be more Bor units, there'd be less attackers. That could very easily result in a vastly different game than what we're seeing here. So, do I think it was a hopeless situation? I don't think so. I think that given how they played it out and how well they used some of their tools and like some of the plays that those tree units were able to make, it's doable. But it is tough, and it does rely a little bit on I guess your enemies committing to things that you want them to commit to and being willing to do that. And it certainly seemed like Cuarthol was. They were super aggressive right off the bat from start to finish. Mevin wanted to get into the fight, and he was almost one of the first people to do so. So I think that maybe reading that could have punished Cuarthol, held up Feanor, tired them out a little bit, made the attackers spend more resources to take those areas than what it was ultimately worth, and then still maintained, good numbers count on Bor moving into the end of the game. So, a couple extra axemen, some skirmishers, things like that might have made all the difference, especially in holding some of the choke points. Because once the outer defenses of the city, not like outside the city, but like that first ring had fallen, everything else falls so quickly afterwards, and they had to make a really swift retreat up that hill. They got caught a little bit. They had to trade a little bit more. It was pretty ugly. So having those extra units might have helped them hold on a little bit longer, trade a little bit more efficiently, and yeah, it very, very well could have been doable, and not necessarily in an ideal world either. So, really good game there. Tundra's Fox getting all the kills, man. Like, that's wild. I can't say that because it has weird, strange characters in it, but the new guy playing Bor, he did all right. Not the worst, but this is not the numbers that you want to see when you're a defender and you're this outnumbered. Stu did pretty well as well. Yeah, 1,800 kills. That's about what you would expect, and another 800 or 900 or so from his ally up here. That would have been amazing. Like, this would have been a much, much closer game. Defenders, kills don't really matter for them. They won the game. There's less kills to go around anyway. Mevin really took some brutal losses. Again, like I said, he was very, very eager to get into the fight, and that was obvious. And maybe that could have been something that would be turned against him ultimately. Captain Gervais, let's see what he did. He didn't really lose a whole ton of stuff, but that's to be expected. Belagost was really, really down on units. I mean, it says, like, these numbers are wrong. They won the game, so they get healed units back, and that can sometimes be literally hundreds of units. Like, you can go from having no army to having 500 on the scoreboard at the end of the game. So, don't read into this too much. Their casualty numbers are obviously a lot higher than this. But yeah, it's a good game from the attackers and the defenders. The attackers really played it kind of textbook, slowly grinding things down, making good choices, hiding the units that they want to keep, safe for the final push. Those phalanx units, I don't think that they were bloodied at all from Gondolin, the phalanx of the king. And we saw them right on the front lines at the end, so they were preserved really well. So, good choices. The defenders obviously played, pretty strongly, but it was those early game losses that ultimately, I think, that's my opinion. Tell me if you think I'm wrong down in the comments. But that's what I think ultimately kind of killed them there was losing those units. And that's really down to a little bit of inexperience, perhaps some miscommunication. But yeah, it's a shame because it was a risk I think worth taking. They just needed to commit to it. In any case, my name is Jordan, also known as JMonster. Hope you guys enjoyed this, and I will see you next time. Take care, everybody.